There's a reason we use a Japanese word for a catastrophic seismic ocean wave. Japan has had more tsunamis than any place else on Earth. And the massive 9.0 earthquake 9 days ago and the subsequent tsunami has left nearly 8,500 people dead, some 13,000 missing, and nearly 500,000 homeless. And it leaves Japan teetering on the edge of a nuclear crisis that has already resulted in measurable amounts of radioactivity turning up in milk, drinking water, and in some crops. Scott Pelley and a 60 Minutes team have been in Japan for more than a week, traveling from Tokyo to the port city Sendai to the once beautiful resort of Matsushima and into the zone surrounding the Fukushima Daiichi Nuclear Power Plant. There tonight, emergency crews are struggling to restore cooling and stabilize pressure inside the reactors. What we have found in Japan is a catastrophe that reveals both the power of nature and the fragility of human technology.
The Fukushima Daiichi crisis is not one nuclear emergency. It is 4 potentially catastrophic events standing side by side. In all, there are 6 reactor stations. Numbers 1 through 4 are in peril. Last week, crews risked their lives to get water onto melting uranium fuel. Through explosions and blasts of radioactive steam, a few hundred Japanese joined battle with the most powerful force known to man. One of the Americans responding to the emergency is Julia Neshwat. She's a State Department official who was already in Japan working on nuclear issues. She served in Washington as Deputy Chief of Staff to the Director of National Intelligence. In Tokyo, she's been on the Fukushima disaster from the start.
We're providing the full resources of the United States government, everything we've got.
Yes,
we've
absolutely.
told them is at their disposal.
Absolutely.
Our best people are on this?
Yes, they are, working nonstop around the clock in each of the operation centers.
And they are now working side by side with the Japanese?
Yes.
But that wasn't always the case.
Not in the beginning, no.
An American team of top experts arrived shortly after the disaster, but they were largely stuck at the U.S. Embassy. The Japanese didn't think they needed the help. But by last Tuesday, the emergency was out of control, and the U.S. gave the Japanese an ominous private warning.
That if we don't expand the efforts, will require heroic work done that could be quite devastating for the workers.
What do we mean by that?
That means they could very well lose their lives.
An official with the U.S. government told the Japanese that your people are going to have to die to save that plant unless you let us help you.
Yes.
At one point during the week, the hazard was so great the Japanese took all but about 70 workers out of the plant. Their problem is water. The systems that keep the radioactive fuel rods cool failed. The rods are partially melting, releasing radiation. And it's not just the reactors. There are also used fuel rods, essentially nuclear waste, stored in pools nearby. They're also losing water, and American experts fear that one of these pools is already dry. Neshwat told us the danger is multiplied because the reactors are so close together.
That is a grave concern at this time. If there is an explosion, if there is a meltdown, a fire, it can absolutely affect the neighboring plants.
What would that mean?
Oh, goodness, I don't want to even think what that could mean. That's just something that we would have to really plan for at the greatest scale, and we're hoping and praying that that's not the case.
All last week, the U.S. said the crisis was more grave than the Japanese apparently believed, and so far, the U.S. experts have been right. Last Wednesday, the American embassy began a voluntary evacuation of U.S. citizens. It wasn't until 2 days later that the Japanese acknowledged the threat was greater than they'd thought. The Japanese declared a voluntary evacuation zone of 12 miles around the plant. The U.S. says it should be 50 miles. There is great uncertainty. Top experts disagree on fundamental questions, such as whether melting fuel rods would cause an explosion or just a fire. Answers are critical to planning for a bigger emergency.
It's just so uncertain. This is unprecedented, uncharted territory that the consequences could be greater than we expect.
More than 50 American experts are in Japan, including engineers from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission and public health advisors. Many are working in 3 joint emergency operations centers around Tokyo. One of their biggest problems is getting a good look at the damaged reactors. Surveillance pictures have been poor.
You're dealing with the smoke, you're dealing with, the debris. It's just very difficult to make such an assessment of the situation. I mean, you're trying to really scrutinize the pixels of the picture.
The U.S. team is using cameras and sensors carried by drones in the air and robots on the ground to get a clearer idea of what's going on. No one knows what will happen at Fukushima, but it's important to remember that even without this nuclear crisis, Japan has already suffered a catastrophe. This was the moment that altered the course of Japanese history. The tsunami inundated about 400 miles of the northern coast. You can't capture the enormity of it, so we stopped in one small town. Matsushima was said to be among the most beautiful places in Japan, a famous vacation spot. The name has the same ring to a Japanese as Big Sur or Cape Cod does to an American. Matsushima means Pine Tree Island. The trees are about all that's left.
What was the personality of the town? What was this place like?
Oh, everyone's very friendly.
David Chumrunlert is a native of Texas who's been teaching English in Matsushima schools for a couple of years. We met over a canal where tourists came to fish. That's a bridge we're on. The canal is full of houses and cars.
This is where the kids from the school came from.
Yeah, they would come from here and around this area.
Nobiru Elementary School is around the corner. David Chumrunlert was among the teachers and students who were wrapping up the day when the building began to roll on the greatest quake Japan has ever seen.
The teachers were like, let's go check the classrooms to make sure everyone's okay and start getting everyone to the gym.
This is the earthquake-reinforced gym, which stands across the playground from the three-story school.
Some guy with a helmet on, he ran in and he was like, tsunami's coming. And then the principal was like, okay, everyone run back to the school. The fifth grade teacher, he was like at the front of the group and he said he saw a wall of water coming. So he's like, everyone run back inside.
It was too late.
Yeah, it was
to get out of the gym.
To get out of the gym.
Inside, there were about 200 people, children from 6 to 11, parents who'd come to pick them up. Less than 30 minutes after the quake, they were swept up in a surge of seawater and debris.
It was blasting through the door, and it was like, when it was hitting the walls, it would make kind of like a whirlpool kind of motion. So at that point, it had risen up to the stage level.
Water didn't stop there.
No, it didn't.
What happened next?
I was starting to get like sucked out into the middle, and I didn't want that to happen, so I grabbed the wall. And then a grandpa and some lady who was hanging on to him, they washed by me and they managed to grab my shoulder. And so they were like hanging on to me, and we were like, I could feel it getting pulled.
What happened to the older man and woman who were holding on to you?
I don't know. I don't know what happened to them.
What happened then?
I grabbed the railing and I somehow found my footing. I don't know what it was, but I think it was the top of the basketball goal.
The water was that deep?
Yeah, it came all the way up to the second the balcony.
This is the goal and the railing behind. There's narrow standing room between the railing and the wall.
I saw like one of my kids, he was like struggling, so I grabbed him, I grabbed his shirt, and I was able to like pull him over to the side, and he was able to grab onto the railing, and I helped heave him over, and I saw like a big desk with like 4 or 5 of my kids like hanging on to it, and they're like saying, they're shouting like, help me, help us, help us. And finally I was able to like grab a hold of the desk and pull it closer to me, and then was able to grab them one by one, and we were able to get them over. And then there was one more lady, and we got her over too.
In 2 hours, night had fallen.
You were in the total darkness, in the freezing cold, with the seawater all around you for 4 hours, 5 hours?
About 6 hours.
Wondering when the rescuers would come.
Yeah. And then the aftershocks would come, and everyone would just huddle down together and like afraid again.
What were you saying to the children over that long, dark night?
I just kept saying like, hang in there, and just like try to like give them a little smile, make them smile a little bit.
In a wrecked house nearby, we found a child rescued from the gym, 6-year-old Seina Suzuki in her grandmother's arms.
Came all the way up to here.
She told us, "The water came up to my neck, up to my face."
How did you get away?
A teacher grabbed me by the arm and pulled me up out of the water. We don't know if it was David Chumrundlert who grabbed her. There's a lot that's unknown.
How many survivors would you estimate were up there on the balcony?
I'm hoping at least over 100. I hope. I'm not sure though.
We came back to the gym and were surprised to find those who did not survive lying across the basketball court and up there on the stage. Families searched for their loved ones, lifting blankets one by one in a combination of hope and dread.
There are about 85 bodies in the gym by my count. It is now 5 days since the tsunami. The Army has come in and done the best they can. They pulled a car out of this entranceway and wrapped most of the bodies up in Army blankets. But the fact of the matter is there is no place to put this many bodies. The morgues are completely full. And frankly, there aren't enough people to move them. It is a fact in this part of Japan that at this moment in time, there are not enough living to take care of the dead.
In Matsushima, we found this one small unit of Japanese Self-Defense Force engineers. They seem to vanish in the vast destruction. They're clearing roads and searching houses, but the response so far seems strangely small. They're spread thin over the 400 miles. There's no sense of hurry. The engineers knock off at dusk, a sign that they're not expecting to rescue anyone. Not now. All across northern Japan, nearly 500,000 are homeless. Nearly 1 million have no power, and more than 2 million are without water. In the coastal city of Sendai, a city of 1 million people, about the size of Detroit, we saw nearly 3,000 residents patiently waiting for a grocery store to open for the first time in days. There are shortages of food, and lines for gasoline stretch half a mile. Add to all of this what you might call nuclear refugees. Thousands are in shelters because their homes are too close to the Fukushima reactors. Tomonori Kato came in to be checked for radiation. He was clean, but his home is half a mile from the nuclear plant. He's lived there 50 years, and he told us that he expects he will never return. The nuclear refugees were loaded onto buses and hurried away, carrying almost nothing. Not only are their homes in danger of being irradiated, but every possession they own. Yoshihiko Igarashi's house is 3 miles from the plant. His daughter was born there. She turned 20 last week in the shelter. Like everyone, they've laid out a few square feet on the floor with no idea how long they'll be here. 1,600 people are in this shelter alone. It's just 20 miles from where the reactor fires are burning. If you believe U.S. experts, that's much too close. Igarashi told us he feels that way too. The Japanese are, for the moment, balancing between the disaster that has happened and the disaster that awaits. The Prime Minister told his people they will rebuild Japan. But all along the northern coast and in the town of Pine Tree Island, there is a powerful sense that for now, time has stopped.
No matter how many pictures you've seen, no matter how many reports you've heard, it's a shock when you get there. It wasn't the nuclear disaster or the powerful earthquake that swept the northeast coast of Japan into the sea. It was a tsunami, a black wave darker than a nightmare. No town was hit harder this past March than Otsuchi. In a matter of minutes, at least 1,500 people out of a population of only 15,000 were lost. Otsuchi is so remote, very few people ever get there. But 14 years ago, a group of Americans formed a bond with the town, a bond that has only grown deeper since the tragedy. The world was so mesmerized by the nuclear accident that after a while, these coastal towns were forgotten. We went to Otsuchi ourselves to see what has become of a town that's on the brink of extinction. We got there just in time to witness a haunting ceremony, drumbeats for the dead. Buddhist monks marched through the remnants of this 800-year-old town, chanting a requiem. Otsuchi reminds one of Hiroshima 66 years ago. Nature can be as vicious as an atomic bomb. 10% of the population was wiped out. It was a fatal lesson in the fragility of civilization. The earthquake alone was so powerful, it actually lowered the ground level of Japan and moved the entire island eastward by 8 feet. Every day, high tide brings a flood. Even months later, the survivors are still living in temporary housing. But everyone understands temporary can last a long time. This is Otsuchi before the tsunami, and this is when Otsuchi stopped, 3:25 p.m., March 11, 2011.
This is my house.
That's your house.
Yeah.
Ken Sasaki works for City Hall in a city which has disappeared. How long had you been living here?
Over 20 years. And
Now, when you came back here the first time after the tsunami, was there anything of yours left here?
nothing was left.
Ken was in a meeting near the harbor when the earthquake struck. 30 minutes later, he heard an ominous noise coming from the ocean.
Oh, it must be tsunami. I have to run to up here. And then I turned back. That was so...
Must have looked like hell.
Yeah, it must be the hell.
9 of his relatives were killed by the tsunami. Aunts, cousins. Ken-san, as he's known, had to live out of his car for 3 weeks.
It was terrible. It was so cold. And then, there was no gas, no whiskey, no beers.
Ken-san is as unique a character as you'll find in Japan. A music lover and guitar player, he learned English listening to the Beatles. The ocean has taken things away from Ken-san before. When he was 2, Ken-san's father died off Otsuchi's coast in a fishing accident. When he was a boy, Ken-san would gaze out to sea looking for his father. He always wondered what was on the other side of that ocean. When he grew up, he took out an atlas and traced his finger across the Pacific. It landed on the town of Fort Bragg, California.
Across the ocean, so there are a city of Fort Bragg.
A straight line.
Yeah.
Had you ever heard of Fort Bragg?
No. I only heard about San Francisco, California, like that. And then I tried to find out what kind of city is Fort Bragg.
What did you find out?
It is the world's largest salmon barbecue.
The world's largest salmon barbecue?
Right.
That's quite a distinction.
And then, so as you see, our town has a big salmon history.
2 salmon towns.
Yeah. Oh, it's nice.
Ken-san wanted to get to know this Fort Bragg, California, so in 1997, he sent a fax to Fort Bragg City Hall inviting the mayor to Otsuchi for a marine convention. Much to his surprise, the mayor said, okay. It was the beginning of a beautiful friendship. The 2 salmon towns started an exchange program. For 10 years, people shuttled back and forth across the Pacific. During their last visit to Otsuchi, the folks from Fort Bragg held their going-away party inside a tourist boat, just 5 months before all parties stopped. After the tsunami, did you get messages from Fort Bragg?
So many people send me many emails. That makes me cry,
Made you cry?
Yeah, I feel so happy to get many messages from Fort Bragg, my friends.
One of those friends was Sharon Davis. At our invitation, she came back to Otsuchi and thought she knew what awaited her.
I've seen the pictures and the videos, but this is infinitely worse.
She was particularly concerned about Ken-san, the man who had first brought Otsuchi and Fort Bragg together.
Ken-san, it's so good.
Yeah.
I know you lost all your guitars in the tsunami.
No way.
It's for you.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Last year, Sharon hosted two Otsuchi students, Sadako and Nana, at her home in California as part of the exchange program. They'd survived the tsunami, heard Sharon was in town,
This way.
heard she was coming to their school.
That was like the sun coming out from behind the clouds. It was beautiful.
Girls are okay?
They are. They're okay. They're strong girls. And for what they've been through, it really amazes me.
Sharon brought 1,000 letters from kids back in Fort Bragg.
Very frightening.
But some of the reunions were tough. So tough that when Otsuchi's school superintendent spotted Sharon, he tried hard to smile, but couldn't pull it off. Sharon expressed her sorrow in Japanese as she gave Otsuchi's vice mayor a gift.
Oh, thank you.
A picture of his former boss, the mayor. Otsuchi's mayor didn't survive the tsunami. He stayed in his second-floor office at City Hall, orchestrating the evacuation.
And he told his staff to evacuate to the roof. He stayed on the second floor and was killed by the tsunami along with about 20 of his other staff.
The people who made it up to the roof were saved?
Yes,
Can't think of a better word, heroism.
he died a hero.
Otsuchi, like every village along the coast, had a seawall, but the sea can always throw up a higher wave. Otsuchi's wall fared no better than a sand castle built by children on a beach. The tsunami was so furious, it picked up boats from the sea and dropped them on roofs. And this one picture of this one boat has come to stand for the entire Japanese tragedy. That has become the boat, hasn't it?
It's the iconic image from this event.
And the last time you were here, you were laughing and dancing on that boat.
We were.
It was the boat that had hosted Fort Bragg's farewell party 5 months earlier. It won't be seeing the sea again. It's being turned into trash. Occasionally, you spot old people wandering through the wasteland, looking for something they'll never find. But bodies were still being found while we were there, 3 months after the tsunami. Officially, the death toll in Otsuchi is put at 1,500. Think that's accurate?
I really don't. And I think that it has a lot to do with the way the Japanese specify whether or not a person is missing. And until somebody reports them missing, they're not statistically missing. So in this case, if an entire family was lost, there's no one left to report someone missing.
It's not only people, memories are missing. Family history is washed up in the rubble. Every Saturday, photographs found in the wreckage are displayed at the high school. A new sister, a haircut. Happiness is recovering one's past. Clearing all the debris will take years. Sometimes it's lifted by what look like prehistoric creatures. Sometimes it's lifted by hand. These people belong to the Fishermen's Union. They're cleaning up the beach by the seawall that let them down. This isn't an exercise bike, it's a gas station. Keep pedaling, keep pumping. The signs say, never give up. The Japanese never have in the past, but this one is a bit much. They're getting a little help from their friends, though.
Well, we're sending the money.
The people of Fort Bragg, population 7,000, have raised $180,000 for Otsuchi. There was no paper, No cards left in town, so they wrote their thank you note on all they had left, a tarp. Looking at the people of Otsuchi, you'd never know what they'd been through. In Japan, exhibiting one's trauma is not considered polite. Sitting here looking at all this desolation, knowing that you lost everything you had,
Right.
yet you keep on smiling. How do you do that?
I cannot cry, you know. I don't want to cry. So we need a smile, we need a laughing. Around here, we had a...
Before we left, Ken-san wanted to show us something sprouting in the dust that was once his home.
Yeah, look this.
A new hydrangea plant.
This is a kind of a hope. It's a life.
You don't know when your house will be rebuilt, but when it is,
Yeah,
you're going to replant the hydrangea.
yeah, I hope so. We are living.
There's new life here.
Yes.
The magnitude 9 earthquake that struck Japan on March 11, 2011, not only shook the ground, it shook the Japanese people's faith in their government and the nuclear power industry. You can see the impact of the disaster in the towns right around the plant, only you can't get there. The earthquake did some damage, the tsunami did more, but the reason many of them are empty and off-limits today is because of the nuclear accident at the Fukushima power plant next door. The whole area is now a radioactive wasteland, and the people who live there don't know if they'll ever be able to go home. Many don't know if they'll want to. 3 years later, the events of March 11th darkened their lives so deeply that many speak of it simply as 3/11. The hell that broke loose on March 11, 2011 was the strongest earthquake in Japan's history. When the shaking stopped, the tsunami raced toward shore with as much fury as nature can muster. Almost all of the more than 18,000 people who died that day on Japan's northeast coast died in the flood. The quake didn't do much damage to the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power station, but the tsunami shut down the reactor's emergency cooling systems and they started to melt down. Hydrogen gases inside the buildings then exploded, spreading radiation into communities more than 25 miles away. Today, in the town of Tomioka, the radiation levels are considered safe enough to allow people in during the day. Loudspeakers warn visitors that they must leave by 3 p.m. We were alone on the day we were there. The disaster seems to have stopped time. The clock shows 2:46, the moment the earthquake hit. And the damage to shops and homes looks like it could have happened yesterday. The stack of newspapers we found were dated March 12, 2011, the day after the quake and tsunami. You can see people had to leave in a hurry. That was the morning the government told people of this town and neighboring towns to get out quickly. Welcome to Okuma, says the sign. Population today, 3 years later, 0. More than 11,000 people left town that day and never returned. Would you ever want to go back to Okuma to live there again?
Yes, I would like to before I die.
Norio Kimura lived with his wife and 2 daughters next door to his parents. The tsunami killed his father, his wife, and his youngest daughter, Yuna, a bright and cheerful 7-year-old. This is what their homes looked like before March 11th, 2011. This is what's left today, foundations and scraps of memories that he keeps in a small box by what was once the front door.
This is a shoe she was wearing that day, which was found in a heap of rubble 6 months after the disaster.
Because of radiation, Kimura can only visit his former home 10 times a year and stay only 5 hours. In February, his allotted day came in the middle of a blizzard. On each visit, Kimura brings flowers to a small shrine he built to honor his family. They were among the 111 people who died in Okuma that day. The remains of 110 have been recovered. The only one still missing is Norio Kimura's daughter, Yuna. 10 times a year, he goes back home to search for her.
On Saturday, you were digging again in Okuma. It was snowing, it was freezing. Why?
To find Yuna, of course. And also, if I stop searching or gathering her things, I will lose the connection with her. To be honest, the reason why I can live my life every day is because I have to find her and her things. I need to do this to keep my sanity.
Volunteers now help Kimura dig through the piles of debris left by the tsunami. Everyone's dressed in protective clothing to limit their exposure to radiation. The digging seems futile, but on this day, Kimura unearthed clothing he says belonged to his surviving daughter, Mayu. On March 11th, the day of the tsunami, Kimura made a mistake for which he will never forgive himself. He was at work on a farm, and he stayed there.
Did you think then that there would be a tsunami?
There was a radio at my work, and my boss told me that the tsunami was going to be 3 meters tall. My house is 5 to 6 meters above sea level, so I was convinced that our home would be fine, and didn't worry about it after that at all.
Do you think there's anything you could have done to save your family?
I should have gone home right away. I regret believing the information easily while my family was in life-threatening danger. Even now I say to myself, what was I thinking?
When radiation forced the evacuation of Okuma, the town leader told Norio Kimura to stop searching for the missing and start caring for the living. Sahina's daughter moved here to the Japanese Alps, where the brisk air and the snow-capped mountains made radiation and tsunamis difficult to imagine. Kimura has traded farming for a guest house he's planning to open. His daughter Mayu talks about her mother more than her missing sister, and doesn't ask why her father continues searching for her. Their new mountain home is 2,000 feet above the perils of the sea and 180 miles from the Fukushima plant. Ghost towns surround the plant now, but 3 years later, there are still more than 4,000 workers there, all of them wearing layers of protection. Because of the exposure to radiation, the men in this building are only allowed to work 2.5 hours a day. They're not producing any electricity, they're just cleaning up.
Were TEPCO workers adequately trained to handle the emergency?
I don't think so.
Within months of the accident, Yoichi Funabashi, a former newspaper editor, headed an investigation into what went wrong and why. It was the only investigation not sponsored by the government, and its conclusions were brutal.
I was very much concerned about the government not telling the truth to the public.
The revelations in Funabashi's report added to the public's anger and dismay. He wrote that from the beginning, the government had conspired with the industry to convince people that nuclear power is safe.
So the government effort at the time was to convince people that there was nothing to worry about.
Exactly. Nothing to worry about. Don't worry, okay? Even don't prepare for that, severe accident, okay? Because that would cause that unnecessary unease and unnecessary misunderstanding.
And there's no reason to prepare.
No reason to prepare. So this avoidance ultimately translated into unpreparedness.
Mother Nature threw a real curveball to the Japanese with that huge tsunami.
Last year, TEPCO hired American nuclear engineer Lake Barrett as an advisor. Barrett directed the cleanup at the 3 Mile Island nuclear plant after its accident in 1979. It's estimated that the cleanup is going to take 30 to 40 years. To a layman, that sounds very, very long. Explain
to me,
why
that's not long at all. That's what I would expect for that kind of thing. It's a huge challenge. It's a big on-site mess that they have to clean up, and it's going to take them decades to do it. It took us 10 years to do 3 Mile Island, and 3 Mile Island accident was much simpler than they have at Fukushima.
Are they where you thought they would be 3 years later?
I'd hope they'd be further along. It's been challenging technically, it's been challenging culturally and politically for them, but they're making good progress now.
Sounds like you're being a little diplomatic.
Well, decision-making process in Japan is complicated.
Decision-making in Japan requires consensus, and reaching consensus often takes a very long time. The most difficult job will be to dismantle the melted reactors, but radiation is too high for workers to get there. For now, TEPCO is inundated with groundwater that leaks into the reactors and gets contaminated. Every day, 100,000 gallons of radioactive water has to be pumped out before it reaches the ocean. TEPCO is filling storage tanks almost as fast as it can build them, and they're notorious for leaking. Another enormous cleanup is happening outside the plant. Entire communities are being cleared of contaminated materials that will have to be stored for generations. This part of Japan is known for its agriculture, but the only crop growing now is the multitude of black bags holding the radioactive waste, filling the empty spaces in towns like Okuma. Now, some of the kids from Okuma live and go to schools 70 miles away.
How many of you would like to go back to Okuma? Everybody. How many of you think you will go back to Okuma? What's keeping you from going back to Okuma now? You can tell me.
Because there's a lot of radiation. There's a lot of radioactive material there.
These kids will be middle-aged before the cleanup is finished. Their homes could have been rebuilt quickly if it had just been an earthquake and a tsunami. It's the man-made disaster which will take decades to repair. This is the class that Norio Kimura's daughter Yuna would have been in if she were alive. Her friend Kureya remembers they ate lunch together.
Where is she now?
In Okuma. She's lonely being alone in the town of Okuma all this time. I think she must be lonely.
About a third of the residents from Okuma decided to stick together and moved into what the government called temporary housing. Temporary is lasting a long time. The 3 generations of Kimuras that once lived together are now split apart. Norio and his daughter live in Nagano, 5 hours away from his mother, Tomoe. She lives in the temporary housing, alone in a cold and cramped room furnished with photographs. The Kimuras, like many Japanese, have a strong connection to their dead and feel obliged to help them be at peace. As long as the dead are in limbo, so are the living.
You've lost so much of your family. Why aren't you together with your son now?
I'm with my husband's ashes now. Once I find a proper place to put him, I'd like to go to Nagano.
What do you think the right place will be?
Our family cemetery in Okuma is contaminated with radiation now. I could come back 2 or 3 times a year to burn incense for him, but my grandchild would not be able to come. I don't want to keep him where his grandchild, whom he used to adore so much, can't even come to visit.
10 times a year, Norio Kimura visits his ancestors in the family cemetery, a place where he thought he would be laid to rest one day, and where his children would come to visit him. But he won't find any peace, he says, until after he finds Yuna.
Do you think there's any chance you'll ever find your daughter?
I know that the chance is very slim, but no matter how slim the chance is, I still cannot stop. From the outside looking in, I know that this is very unlikely, but I still can't stop, even if I cannot ever find her.
More than 7 years have passed since a monster earthquake and tsunami struck northeast Japan and triggered what became, after Chernobyl, the worst nuclear disaster in history at the Fukushima Daiichi Nuclear Power Plant. When 3 of its 6 reactors melted down, hot fuel turned to molten lava and burned through steel walls and concrete floors. To this day, no one knows exactly where, inside the reactor buildings, the fuel is. And it is so deadly, no human can go inside to look for it. So the Japanese company that owns the crippled plant has turned to robots.
There are 4-legged robots, robots that climb stairs, and even robots that can swim into reactors flooded with water. They're equipped with 3D scanners, sensors, and cameras that map the terrain, measure radiation levels, and look for the missing fuel. This is part of a massive cleanup that's expected to cost nearly $200 billion and take decades.
Has anything like this cleanup, in terms of the scope, ever happened before?
No, this is a unique situation here that's never happened in human history. It's a challenge that we've never had before.
Lake Barrett is a nuclear engineer and former Department of Energy official who oversaw the cleanup of the worst nuclear accident in U.S. history, 3 Mile Island. He was hired as a senior advisor by TEPCO, the Tokyo Electric Power Company that owns the plant and is in charge of the effort to find the missing fuel. He's also advising on the development of new robots, like this 6-legged spider robot that engineers are designing to hang from scaffolding and climb onto equipment. He describes them as
very advanced working robots that will actually be the ones with long muscular arms and laser cutters and such that will go in and actually take the molten fuel and put it in an engineered canister and retrieve it.
Should we think of this as a project like sending someone to the moon?
It's even a bigger project in my view, but there's a will here to clean this up, as there was a will to put a man on the moon, and these engineering tasks can be done successfully.
Why not just bury this place? Why not do what they did at Chernobyl? Just cover it up, bury it, and just leave it here, all enclosed.
Number one, this is right next to the sea. We're 100 yards from the ocean. We have typhoons here in Japan. This is also a high earthquake zone, and there's going to be future earthquakes. So these are unknowns that the Japanese and no one wants to deal with.
The earthquake that caused the meltdown measured 9.0, the most powerful ever recorded in Japan, and triggered a series of tsunami waves that swept away cars, houses, and entire towns, killing more than 15,000 people. At Fukushima Daiichi, the enormous waves washed over the plant, flooding the reactors and knocking out power to the cooling pumps that had kept the reactor cores from overheating. Lake Barrett took us to a hill overlooking the reactors, where the radiation levels are still relatively high.
So this is actually right where it all happened, the heart of the disaster, right here.
Correct. There's reactor number 1, reactor number 2, reactor number 3, and when the earthquake happened 100 miles away, these buildings all shook and these towers all shook. But the design was such that they were safe. But 45 minutes later, waves were racing in, tsunami waves from the earthquake. And there were 7 waves that came in at 45 feet high and put the station in what we call station blackout. They had no power, and the cores got hotter inside and hotter and hotter again until the uranium started to melt.
How many tons of radioactive waste was developed here?
Probably 500 to 1,000 tons in each building.
So how long will it be lethal?
Will be lethal for thousands of years.
What we're talking about, really, is 3 meltdowns.
Yes, it was truly hell on earth.
The meltdowns triggered huge explosions that sent plumes of radioactive debris into the atmosphere, forcing the evacuation of everyone within a 12-mile radius, about 160,000 people in all. Weeks later, TEPCO officials engaged in so-called kowtow diplomacy, allowing townspeople to berate them as they prostrated themselves in apology. Thousands of workers were sent to the countryside to decontaminate everything touched by radiation, including digging up dirt and putting it in bags, lots of bags. But while much of the evacuation zone has been decontaminated, there are still entire neighborhoods that are like ghost towns, silent and lifeless, with radiation levels that remain too high. At the plant, they're capturing contaminated groundwater, about 150 tons a day, and storing it in tanks as far as the eye can see.
Water is always a major challenge here, and it's going to remain a major challenge until the entire cores are removed.
The closer workers get to the reactors, the more protective gear they have to wear, as we discovered. We were zipped into Tyvek coveralls and made to wear 2 pairs of socks and 3 pairs of gloves.
Okay, we're going to tape.
Not an inch of skin was exposed. The layers of protection include a mask. It's a little loose.
No, we'll tighten it up.
That often fogged up.
How are we feeling?
Good. And a dosimeter to register the amount of radiation we'd be exposed to. We were ready for battle. We went with a team of TEPCO workers to Unit 3, one of the reactors that melted down on that March day 7 years ago that the Japanese call simply 311.
Lake. There you are, Unit 3.
Oh, watch it, step.
These are shield plates because there's cesium in the ground.
In the years since the accident, much of the damage to the building has been repaired. But it's still dangerous to spend a lot of time here. We could stay only 15 minutes. There's this number I've been seeing, 566.
Right, that's telling you the radiation level that we're in. It's fairly high here. That's why we're going to be here a short time.
How close are you and I right this minute to the core?
The melted cores are about 70 feet that way behind
70 feet from here is the melted core?
Correct. That's right over in here. We don't know quite where other than it fell down into the floor.
So if you sent a worker in right now to find it, how long would they survive?
No one is going to send a worker in there because they'd be overexposed in just a matter of seconds.
Enter the robots.
This is the Robot Research Center.
This is for remote control technology development.
In 2016, the Japanese government opened this $100 million research center near the plant, where a new generation of robots is being developed by teams of engineers and scientists from the nation's top universities and tech companies. Dr. Kuniaki Kawabata is the center's principal researcher.
This is the newest robot, the J11.
So number 11.
Yes.
And what it's an obstacle course.
Yes. The operators use the camera image in the front of the robot, but it's so many hours required to train because it looks very easy, but it's quite difficult.
They also train here in this virtual reality room where 3D data taken inside the reactors by the robots is projected onto this screen. Operators using special glasses can go where no humans can.
So we're actually walking through a part of a reactor.
You feel some immersive experience.
As if you're in there.
Yes.
I actually want to duck. I mean, that's how real it feels to me. Like, here we're going under this thing, I have to duck.
Yes.
But even with all the high-tech training and know-how, the robots have run into problems. For the early models, it was the intense levels of radiation that fried their electronics and cameras.
Their lifetime was hours. We'd hoped it would be days, but it was for hours.
Tell us what happened to the robot named Scorpion. This is a highly sophisticated, and I gather everybody thought this was the answer.
That was going to be the first robot we were going to put inside the containment vessel, which is where we need the information the most, because that's where the core is.
This is Scorpion, whose mission cost an estimated $100 million. It was designed to flatten out and slither through narrow pipes and passageways on its way to the core. And like a scorpion, it raises its tail.
The tail would come up with a camera on top with lights, because you have to have its own lights. It's all dark inside. There are no regular lights. So that was the plan, and we had great expectations and hope for that. We all did. It took a year to prepare, and it was hard work.
But when Scorpion went inside, it hit some debris and got stuck after traveling less than 10 feet.
I can't imagine the frustration levels.
Well, but you'd learn more from failures sometimes than you do from successes.
They had more success with this robot named Little Sunfish, which was designed to swim inside one of the reactors flooded with water. In preparing for Little Sunfish's mission, engineers spent months doing test runs inside this enormous simulation tank, fine-tuning the propellers, cameras, sensors, and 65 yards of electric cable, all built to withstand intense levels of radiation. They used nuclear reactor number 5 to help plan the mission. It didn't melt down when the tsunami hit, and is nearly identical to the one Little Sunfish would scout. Finally, last year, the swimming robot made its foray into the heart of the reactor to look for the missing fuel. Barrett took us into Unit 5 to show us how it maneuvered through the labyrinth of pipes and debris inside the reactor.
The Little Sunfish came down on the edge and it swam underwater down through this little entryway here underneath the reactor vessel.
Is this the route that the Little Sunfish took?
Yes, this is. The Little Sunfish swam through this portal down into this area. It went around the side. It went down through this grating, which was gone. We're here standing directly underneath the reactor vessel. Molten fuel came through here, and it jetted out under very high pressure, and then it came out slowly like lava in a volcano. And it fell down and burned its way through this grating down to the floor.
This is what Little Sunfish saw as technicians guided it through the pipes and hatchways of the flooded interior. It beamed back images revealing clumps of debris, fuel rods, half-destroyed equipment, and murky glimpses of what looks like solidified lava, the first signs, TEPCO officials say, of the missing fuel.
These robotic steps so far have been significant steps, but it is only a small step on a very, very long journey.
This is going to take, you said decades with a S. How many decades?
We don't know for sure. The goal here is 30, 40 years. You know, I personally think it may be to 50, 60, but...
Oh, maybe longer.
Well, it may be longer, but reality is this is a challenge that's never been dealt with before. But every step is a positive step. You learn from that and you go forward to another step.